Hi again then guys, and welcome to of course another circuit tune for Gran Turismo Sport. And as you'll have seen recently on the channel, from yesterday with the Corvette, the end of last week with the Ferrari, the 458 GT3, we are working through some of the Group 3 race cars that I get a lot of requests to do tunes for. This one was actually requested very recently, and since there's no specific order that I'm doing these in, sure, why not do this one next? The Bmw M6 Gt3. Very popular choice, very good car, similar to the Nissan GTR in some ways. It's very big, fairly bulky, kind of heavy steering as well. Now, as far as, of course, the upgrades, I've said before, and even the thumbnail says that it's a balance of performance-friendly tune. And as I mentioned yesterday with the Corvette, what that essentially means is you can use this tune under any circumstances, even where you cannot upgrade the power and weight. So of course you can make it lighter if you want to, and you can improve the power if you want to, but you can still use the tune as long as you can access the settings. So the power and the weight don't really matter too much. In other words, it's this fast with stock power, so if you improve it, of course, it will be even quicker. Now, as far as why you can't see the car, you can thank that to the 1.38 update, which I'm sure for many of you is still causing issues as well. It's getting pretty ridiculous at this point. Since 1.38, it takes like 10 minutes to load the game now. My liveries don't even load half the time. It's ridiculous. So I'm hoping that Polyphony solves this with the next one. I mean, it's not like we've had 38 updates or anything to get it right by now, and it's the 7th game, so, you know. Now, as far as the traction control, we've got that turned off. Of course, it's a race car. Most of you know what you're doing by this point. You don't really need traction control. There's nothing wrong with using it, but if you learn not to, you will end up quicker. Now, as far as the tyres, once again, we've got hards for the exact same reason as the power and weight being stock. If you build it to be good as is, then having better tyres and more power and less weight, it will only be even better. So it's basically giving you the worst case scenario, in other words. Now, as far as the suspension, I'd recommend having the ride height on 70mm for the back, 60mm for the front, which is 5mm higher than the lowest setting for both, in other words. For the frequency, we've got 3 front and back, 6 for the anti-roll, 57 on the compression aspect of the dampers, 85 for the rebound, 1 degree on this one, and also equal camber on the front and the back, which is a little bit different to the Ferrari and the Corvette. And one of the reasons why is because the handling is actually fairly easy on this one. It's not like it's a particularly slippery car. And as far as the toe, that is neutral. You can give it some toe angle if you want to, but I never really use that. As far as the downforce, we've got that as high as it can go, because of course it's a grip tune, a handling tune, a technical circuit tune in particular, rather than, for instance, like Le Mans or even the Nürburgring. So if you do take it on a track like that, you'll want to extend the gears a bit more, maybe give it some more power, of course that won't hurt, and have lower downforce settings. Now, as far as the diff, we've got the lowest settings on all 3, and for this one, you can definitely change that up if you want to, because the handling is pretty heavy on this one. You can really manhandle the car. With the Ferrari, it's about more finesse. With the Corvette, kind of, but not so much. This one, you really need to be brutal, throw the car into the corner, really wrestle with the wheel. Not necessarily in an unusable way. And you'll see from the lap time in just a second that it certainly isn't slow. But as far as the diff, I've gone for, as I said, the lowest. For that reason, it just keeps the handling pretty neutral and makes it fairly easy to predict what the car's going to do. You can get the tail out in lower speed corners, but it's nothing like the Ferrari. Now, as far as finally the gearbox, as I said, it's not a top speed tune. So you can only get about maybe 170, 175 miles per hour out of this thing. So if you want to do more, obviously, you'll want to extend even the gears a bit more, especially the final drive. You want the fully customized transmission. 168 miles per hour is what I'm using for the auto setting. Then for the individual gears, 3.15, 2.35, 1875, 1575, and 1375, with a 6th gear of 1225 and a final drive of 2.5. But of course, you'll want to change some of those extensively if you do end up tuning this to like 700 horsepower, because you'll just hit your top speed way too quick if you do that. So that's it for the tune. Now, of course, what you want to see is what can it actually do on the track, and how does its lap compare to the Ferrari and the Corvette that we've already done. Well, as it turns out, it compares very well, because it's faster than both of them. In fact, it's half a second quicker than the Ferrari and about a second and a half quicker than the Corvette. Now, personally, I still like the Corvette the most of the three that we've done so far. Of course, that's not counting the tunes that I did ages ago when the game first came out, like the Porsche RSR, etc. But as far as this car goes, I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not a massive fan of this generation of M6 anyway, race car or otherwise, but it just feels a little bit too bulky for my tastes. It's basically the same problem that the Bentley has. Of course, that isn't in the game, but in Forza it feels like that, and also the Nissan GT-R. As I mentioned earlier, it's bigger, it's bulkier, and even though the weight isn't actually that bad, it feels heavier than it actually is, which is an unfortunate problem to have. Now, with that being said, it was still the quickest of the three so far, so that speaks for itself. It's the kind of car that I would recommend more so for open circuits, actually. So if you are racing GT3 cars, for instance, at Le Mans, or other tracks like that, maybe Monza as well, that's a good example, maybe the Nürburgring, basically any track where you've got these bigger, wider, more high-speed corners where you're very rarely dropping below 100, that's the kind of track where you really want to use this car. Drag and Trail, it's good for, as the lap time shows, but it wouldn't be my go-to choice. Regardless of how good it is, I just wouldn't choose this car because of personal preference. If you're looking to put in a good lap though, or potentially win a race, then the lap time speaks for itself. So if you do decide to use this tune, obviously I hope you have a ton of fun with it, and I always encourage people to change the tune around and see if you can actually optimize it for yourself even more, because obviously the way you drive will be different to the way I drive. But overall, if you want to check out my other tunes, click here on screen, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.